Look up at the night sky. What do you see? A tapestry of distant stars, the silent dance of planets, maybe the fleeting trail of a shooting star. But for thousands of years, humanity hasn't just seen beauty in the heavens, we've seen prophecy. Messages, warnings, from the earliest civilizations to the modern era, the cosmos has whispered secrets to those willing to listen, sparking myths that shaped empires, legends that altered history, and mysteries that still haunt us today. This isn't just about astronomy, it's about the stories written in the stars, tales so compelling they've guided kings, inspired wars, and even predicted the rise and fall of entire cultures. Imagine standing in ancient Babylon where priests scanned the skies for omens, convinced that a comet's tail foretold famine or invasion. Picture the Maya, whose intricate celestial calendars didn't just track time, they mapped destiny. Fast forward to medieval Europe, where a blazing supernova sent scholars into panic, believing it heralded the apocalypse. These aren't just footnotes in history, they're proof of how deeply the heavens have gripped our imagination, how fiercely we've tried to decode the universe's hidden language. And yet, for every prophecy that came unnervingly true, there are dozens that remain shrouded in mystery, their meanings lost to time or waiting to be uncovered. That's where our journey begins. Today, we're diving into 25 of the most enigmatic celestial prophecies ever recorded, stories of cosmic signs that defied explanation, predictions that chilled those who heard them, and astronomical events so strange they blurred the line between science and myth. We'll travel from the deserts of Egypt to the temples of Tibet, unraveling how a single eclipse could topple a dynasty, why a wandering star might have marked the birth of a god, and what really happened when the sky itself seemed to split open. Some of these tales will unsettle you, others might make you question everything you thought you knew about history. But one thing's certain, by the end, you'll never look at the night sky the same way again. So let's begin, because the stars have been waiting to tell their stories for centuries, and they're not done surprising us yet. Deep in the heart of ancient Greece, high on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, the Oracle of Delphi sat shrouded in fumes rising from the earth, gazing not just into the mist but at the heavens above. She wasn't just a seer of earthly affairs, the stars themselves spoke through her. One of her most chilling prophecies came in the year 480 BC, when the sky seemed to ignite with a celestial omen, a great comet streaking across the night, its tail fanning out like a serpent's tongue. The oracle declared it a sign of impending doom for the Persian king Xerxes, who was then marching his armies toward Greece. "The gods will defend their own," she whispered. "The eagle of Zeus will strike the lion of Persia," and strike it did. Just months later, against impossible odds, the outnumbered Greeks crushed Xerxes' forces at the Battle of Salamis. But this wasn't the only time the oracle's visions aligned with the cosmos. Centuries earlier, she prophesied the rise of Alexander the Great after interpreting a rare alignment of Jupiter and Saturn, a celestial event so potent the Greeks called it the Great Conjunction. She told his father, King Philip, that the boy would ride the lion, a cryptic phrase later mirrored in Alexander's conquest of Persia, symbolized by the lion. Even the temple's architecture echoed this cosmic connection. Its entrance faced east, aligning with the sunrise on specific feast days, as if the gods themselves had etched their approval in stone and light. Yet perhaps the most haunting example came during the Peloponnesian War, when a sudden eclipse recorded by astronomers as a total blackout of the sun in 413 BC sent Athenian generals into panic. The oracle had warned them months prior, the sun's betrayal will be Sparta's ally. Ignoring her, they launched a doomed naval campaign. The eclipse, seen as divine wrath, shattered their morale. Within weeks, their fleet was annihilated and Athens' golden age crumbled. Was it mere coincidence, or did the oracle truly glimpse fate written in the stars? To this day, historians and astronomers debate whether her visions were divine insight or an uncanny understanding of celestial patterns lost to time. One thing certain, when the heavens spoke, Delphi listened, and more often than not, the world trembled at what she heard. The Star of Bethlehem. Few celestial mysteries have sparked as much debate, wonder, and sheer fascination as this single point of light said to have guided the Magi to the birthplace of Jesus. Was it a miracle, a natural astronomical event, or something stranger? For centuries, scholars have scoured ancient records and the night sky itself, trying to pin down what could have shone so brightly, moved so deliberately, and vanished so completely. One leading theory points to a rare planetary conjunction, specifically Jupiter and Saturn aligning in the constellation Pisces around 7 BC. To Babylonian astrologers, Jupiter symbolized kingship, Saturn stood for justice, and Pisces represented the end of an era. When these celestial bodies merged 3 times in 1 year, a phenomenon called a triple conjunction, it would have been read as a cosmic coronation. The Magi, likely steeped in Babylonian astronomy, may have interpreted this as a sign of a divine king's birth in Judea. And here's the eerie part. Modern astronomers have confirmed such a conjunction did occur within the likely time frame of Jesus' birth, but not everyone's convinced. Others argue the star's behavior hovering over Bethlehem, as described in Scripture, doesn't match planetary motion. This has led to alternate theories, like a brilliant supernova. Chinese astronomers recorded an inviting star around 5 BC, possibly a dying star's explosive finale. Yet supernovae don't move or linger, they blaze and fade. Then there's the comet hypothesis. Halley's comet appeared in 12 BC, too early to fit, but another undocumented comet could have been the culprit. Comets, with their eerie tails, were often seen as harbingers of change, but again, they don't stop over a town. Perhaps the most intriguing idea comes from astronomer Michael Molnar, who suggests the star wasn't a luminous object at all, but an astrological event. In ancient astrology, Jupiter's rising behind the moon, an occultation symbolized a king's birth. Records show this occurred in Aries in 6 BC, a sign linked to Judea. To the Magi, this celestial shorthand might have been the real star, invisible to the untrained eye but screaming with meaning to those who knew the code. The debate rages on because the Star of Bethlehem exists at the crossroads of faith and science, myth and observation. Whether divine sign or cosmic coincidence, its legacy endures, a reminder that sometimes the heavens don't just light our way. They tell a story, and 2,000 years later we're still deciphering its words. December 21, 2012, for many, the date still sends a shiver down the spine. That was the day the ancient Maya supposedly predicted the world would end, marking the conclusion of their long count calendar's 13-Bacton cycle. Tabloids screamed about doomsday, Hollywood cashed in with disaster movies, conspiracy theorists stockpiled canned goods, but beneath the hysteria lies a far more fascinating truth. We got the Maya spectacularly wrong. Their long count calendar wasn't a countdown to oblivion, it was a cosmic reset button marking the end of one great cycle and the dawn of another. To understand why, we need to step into the Maya's worldview, where time wasn't linear but cyclical, like the gears of a celestial clock. Each Bacton, roughly 394 of our years, represented a chapter in an infinite story. 13 Bactons completed a world age, akin to shifting seasons of existence. Spanish colonial records even describe Maya priests referencing 5 previous cycles, each ending not in annihilation, but transformation, floods, fires, or upheavals that birthed new eras. So where did the doomsday myth take root? Blame, mistranslation, and pop culture. Early 20th century scholars, piecing together fragmented glyphs, conflated the calendar's completion with apocalyptic Aztec lore. The idea snowballed in the 1960s when New Age authors, cherry-picking Maya texts, spun tales of planetary alignment and galactic darkness. By 2012, the prophecy had spiraled so far from its origins that actual Maya descendants like the Quiché elders of Guatemala held press conferences pleading, "Our calendar doesn't predict the end. It predicts rebirth." Modern archaeology supports them. At Mexico's Tortuguero Monument, a carved stela referencing the 13 Bactan date describes it as a time when the god Balon Yocht would descend. But Balon Yocht wasn't a destroyer. He was a trickster deity associated with change and renewal. Other inscriptions speak of rituals planned for the occasion, hardly something you'd schedule for doomsday. Even the astronomy checks out. December 21st, 2012, aligned with the winter solstice sun passing through the Milky Way's dark rift, a sacred portal in Maya cosmology symbolizing creation, not destruction. Perhaps the greatest irony, the Maya themselves were master timekeepers precisely because they saw beyond endings. Their mathematics tracked Venus's cycles to the hour, predicted eclipses centuries in advance, and even calibrated a calendar round, synchronizing solar and sacred years. For a civilization that mapped time so meticulously, the idea of it simply stopping would have been laughable. The real prophecy here isn't about fire and chaos, it's about humanity's endless hunger to find meaning in the stars, even when we're staring straight at the wrong interpretation. The Maya weren't forecasting the end. They were reminding us that time, like the cosmos, moves in circles, and sometimes the most terrifying doomsday is the one we invent ourselves. The night sky blazed with an eerie glow in 1811 as the Great Comet unfurled across Europe, a spectacle so vast its tail stretched over half the heavens. For months it hung there, an unblinking celestial sentinel watching over a continent at war. Down below, Napoleon Bonaparte stood at the peak of his power, having conquered much of Europe. But to those who believed in the language of the stars, that comet wasn't just a cosmic wonder. It was a death warrant for an empire. Contemporary newspapers and diaries from the time reveal just how deeply the comet unsettled people. In France, royalist sympathizers whispered it was a divine rebuke of Napoleon's hubris. German broadsheets printed illustrations of the comet morphing into a fiery sword pointed at the emperor's armies. Even soldiers in Napoleon's ranks reportedly grew uneasy, interpreting its prolonged visibility as a sign their luck was about to turn, and turn it did. Just 2 years later, after his disastrous invasion of Russia, where record cold temperatures crippled his forces, Napoleon's empire crumbled. To many, the timing wasn't coincidence. It was prophecy, but why did comets strike such fear in the early 19th century? Centuries of tradition had cast them as harbingers of catastrophe. Shakespeare himself called them the blaze of heaven, the doom of princes. The Great Comet of 1664 was blamed for London's Great Plague. Halley's Comet in 1066 was said to foreshadow William the Conqueror's invasion of England. By Napoleon's era, these beliefs weren't just folklore, they were woven into the fabric of how people understood their world. The comet's timing couldn't have been more ominous. It appeared just as Napoleon's continental system of trade blockades began strangling Europe's economies, fueling resentment against his rule. Science now tells us the 1811 comet was among the largest ever recorded, a ball of ice and dust whose brilliance came from an unusually close pass to Earth. But here's what's fascinating. Modern historians note that Napoleon's downfall wasn't triggered by any single event, but by a cascade of disasters that mirrored the comet's slow, inevitable arc. The Russian winter, rebellions across occupied territories, coalitions forming against him. Like the comet itself, his decline was visible long before the final crash. Maybe that's why the omen resonated so deeply, not because it caused his fall, but because it reflected a truth people already sensed. The heavens weren't predicting the future. They were holding up a mirror. Napoleon himself seemed to acknowledge this. In exile on St. Helena, he reportedly mused about the comet to his companions, calling it a chandelier lit for my funeral. Whether he truly believed in its power or recognized its symbolic weight, we'll never know. But the Great Comet of 1811 endures as one of history's most striking examples of how humanity projects its fears and hopes onto the cosmos. Sometimes the stars don't guide our fate, they simply illuminate what we're too afraid to see in ourselves. On the morning of July 4, 1054, Chinese astronomers jotted a frantic note in their records. A guest star had appeared in the constellation Taurus, glowing so brightly it rivaled the full moon. For 23 days, this uninvited celestial visitor remained visible even in broad daylight. A searing white pinprick that cast shadows at noon. Half a world away, ancestral Puebloan artists in what's now New Mexico captured the same event in petroglyphs, carving spirals and stars onto canyon walls as if trying to pin the anomaly to Earth. What both cultures witnessed was humanity's first documented supernova, the violent death of a star now known as the Crab Nebula. But to those who saw it 7 centuries ago, this wasn't just an astronomical event. It was a cosmic alarm bell. In the imperial Chinese court, astrologers scrambled to interpret the omen. According to the song she chronicles, Emperor Renzong's advisors warned the guest star signaled heaven's displeasure, a belief steeped in tradition where unusual celestial phenomena reflected the ruler's virtue. Within months, droughts withered crops along the Yellow River, and whispers of rebellion bubbled among peasants who saw the star as proof the mandate of heaven was slipping. Yet paradoxically, Buddhist monks recorded it as an auspicious sign, comparing its radiant burst to the sudden enlightenment of the Buddha. This duality, destruction and rebirth, echoed across cultures. The Maya, meticulously tracking Venus at the time, may have linked it to the feathered serpent Kukulkan's cyclical return, while Islamic scholars in Baghdad noted its appearance coincided with the Seljuk Empire's rise, framing it as divine endorsement of new power. The ancestral Puebloan's interpretation remains the most haunting. At Choco Canyon, a sprawling complex aligned with solstices and lunar cycles, someone etched a crescent moon cradling a star onto a rock face, a scene modern astronomers confirmed matches the supernova's position near the moon on July 5th. To a culture already attuned to celestial patterns, this unprecedented light might have signaled a call to transformation. Within decades, Choco's great houses were abandoned, but not in chaos. Evidence suggests a deliberate, organized exodus, as if the people, heeding some cosmic deadline, dispersed to start anew. Today, we know the Crab Nebula as a swirling cloud of gas 6,000 light-years away, its heart pulsing with a neutron star spinning 30 times per second. But peel back the science and you'll find the real magic, how a single cosmic instant became a Rorschach test for humanity's hopes and fears. Some saw doom. Others saw destiny. All were right because supernovae are both scattering the heavy elements that build planets and life even as they obliterate worlds. The 1054 supernova didn't just light up the sky. It illuminated a truth we're still grappling with, that in the grand theater of the universe, destruction and creation are forever entwined. In 1348, as Halley's Comet carved a fiery scar across the sky, Europe braced for catastrophe, and it came not from the heavens but the earth. Rats scurried through grain stores, fevers burned through villages. Within years, a third of the continent lay dead, and terrified survivors pointed to the comet as the omen they'd ignored. A foul vapor followed its tail, wrote one chronicler, and with it came the pestilence. This wasn't just superstition, it was a desperate attempt to make sense of the unimaginable. The Black Death's indiscriminate slaughter defied logic, so medieval minds turned to the only explanation grand enough to match the horror: divine wrath written in the stars. But the link between comets and plagues ran deeper than one outbreak. Centuries of tradition had already cemented the connection. When Halley's Comet reappeared in 1665, Londoners watched it through handkerchiefs soaked in vinegar, the same rags they pressed to their faces to ward off the Great Plague's miasma. Parish records from the time reveal sermons blaming the comet for God's scourge, while physicians like Nathaniel Hodges noted its arrival coincided with the plague's peak, calling it a beacon of mortality. Even the comet's orbit seemed to play into the fear. Appearing roughly every 76 years, Halley's became a generational specter, its returns mirroring the cyclical nature of epidemics. What's chilling is how this pattern persisted into the modern era. During the 1835 appearance, cholera ravaged Europe and North America, with newspapers dubbing the comet the celestial bringer of the Blue Death. In 1910, as it streaked past Earth, the Great White Plague tuberculosis reached its apex, killing 1 in 7 Americans. While we now know bacteria and viruses cause disease, the psychological grip of these cosmic coincidences reveals something profound. When faced with invisible killers, humanity has always sought villains it can see. Comets, with their eerie tails and unpredictable paths, became the perfect scapegoats, celestial lightning rods for our terror. Science, of course, dismantles the connection. Halley's comet in 1348 was 2 years gone by the time the plague reached Genoa. The 1665 outbreak began months before the comet's return. But here's the twist: medieval observers weren't entirely wrong about celestial influences, just their mechanism. Modern research suggests cosmic events might indirectly shape pandemics. A study in the Journal of Epidemiology linked the 1348 outbreak to a preceding drought caused by climate shifts potentially triggered by atmospheric changes from meteor showers. Another theory posits that comet-borne dust could weaken immune systems over generations. Neither justifies the old terror, but both hint at a universe far more interconnected than we once imagined. The real prophecy hidden in these twin tales isn't about comets causing plagues. It's about how trauma rewires belief. When societies fracture under catastrophe, they don't just look for causes, they need narratives grand enough to bear the weight of their grief. A comet is a story, a beam of light sweeping across the sky, declaring, "This was no accident." In that sense, Halley's became more than a celestial body. It became a mirror reflecting humanity's oldest fear, that disaster never strikes at random, and if we can just decode the signs, next time we might survive. On the morning of March 15, 44 BC, the soothsayer Spurina gripped Julius Caesar's arm with a grave warning, not just about the ides of March, but about the heavens themselves. For weeks, the skies over Rome had been a stage for celestial chaos. A blood-red moon stained the night. Comets blazed where no stars should be. Even the birds, those ancient messengers of the gods, had vanished from the forum. To the Romans, these weren't mere weather quirks. They were the gods screaming in a language every citizen understood. And Caesar, despite his power, was about to learn the hard way that no man, not even a dictator, could outrun the prophecies written in the stars. The first omen struck weeks earlier during the festival of Lupercalia, when a comet streaked across the sky in broad daylight, an event so rare Pliny the Elder later called it a sun with hair. Roman augurs, trained to read divine will in flight patterns and celestial signs, immediately flagged it as a portent of regime change. But Caesar, ever the skeptic, dismissed it as a spectacle for the masses. Then came the nightmares. His wife Calpurnia dreamt their house collapsed and she held his bloodied body, a vision so vivid she begged him to stay home that fateful day. Even the animals behaved oddly. Priests performing sacrifices found the hearts of slaughtered bulls mysteriously missing, a sign so ominous the term heartless entered Latin as exanimus, literally soulless. But the most chilling warning came from the skies themselves. Ancient historians like Suetonius and Cassius Dio recorded that in the weeks before the assassination, the northern lights, normally invisible in Rome, danced so vividly they lit the streets like dawn. To the superstitious Romans, this shimmering curtain of light wasn't atmospheric physics, it was the veil between worlds thinning, allowing the dead to walk among the living. Coins minted that year show comets hovering over Caesar's profile, suggesting even his supporters saw the connection. and when the daggers struck in Pompey's theater, the heavens seemed to confirm the deed. That very night, a new comet appeared, burning for 7 days straight. The people called it Sidus Iulium, Caesar's star, believing it carried his soul to join the gods. What makes these omens fascinating isn't just their timing, but how they reflect Roman cosmology. Unlike the Greeks, who saw celestial events as abstract signs, Romans treated them as direct divine interventions, a celestial bureaucracy where every eclipse, comet, or storm was a memo from Jupiter himself. Augurs didn't just predict the future, they negotiated with it, performing rituals to untie bad omens like knots in a cosmic rope. Caesar's mistake wasn't ignoring superstition. It was failing to acknowledge that in Rome, the gods didn't send warnings. They issued invoices. Modern astronomy explains many of these phenomena. The blood moon was likely a lunar eclipse on September 21st, 45 BC. The comets, probably fragments of the crude sun-grazing group, notorious for sudden bright flares. But science can't explain why so many omens clustered around Caesar's death, or why, centuries later, Shakespeare would give Calpurnia the prophetic line, "When beggars die, there are no comets seen." Perhaps the real prophecy was never in the stars at all, but in how power blinds even the greatest men to the whispers of the universe until the daggers fall, and the sky itself bears witness. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, a blast ripped through Siberia with the force of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs, leveling 80 million trees across 800 square miles, yet leaving no crater. The Tunguska event remains one of history's most perplexing cosmic mysteries, but while scientists scrambled to explain the explosion, was it a comet? A meteor, something stranger? Occultists across Europe saw something far more sinister, a divine warning shot. In the years leading up to the disaster, apocalyptic fervor had already been simmering. Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society had prophesied a coming age of fire, while Nostradamus's quatrains were being reinterpreted to predict a great fire from the sky. When news of Tunguska reached the West via delayed Siberian telegraphs, these groups pounced. Russian mystic Grigory Rasputin reportedly told Tsar Nicholas II it was God's finger touching Earth, a sentiment echoed by British occultist Aleister Crowley, who linked the event to his Abramelin rituals, claiming it marked the birth of a new eon. Even mainstream newspapers couldn't resist the doom-laden symbolism. The London Illustrated News ran a headline asking, "Has the final judgment begun in Siberia?" What made Tunguska uniquely terrifying wasn't just its scale, but its ambiguity. Unlike familiar disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes, this was an invisible force from the void. Witnesses described a second sun moving across the sky before the explosion, followed by a shockwave that knocked people off their feet hundreds of miles away. Reindeer herders spoke of forests flattened in perfect radial patterns, as if some giant hand had slapped the earth. For a world still reeling from the Lisbon earthquake of 1755, the last act of God on this scale, Tunguska felt like a trial run for Armageddon. The scientific explanations only deepened the unease. Early expeditions found no meteorite fragments, just microscopic silicate spheres hinting at a comet that vaporized midair. This dovetailed eerily with 17th century prophecies by visionaries like Mother Shipton, who'd written of a time when rocks rain from the sky yet leave no stone. Psychic Edgar Cayce later channeled visions of ancient Atlantis being destroyed by crystalline weapons, a narrative some tied to Tunguska's strange glass-like debris. By the 1930s, the event had become a Rorschach test for apocalyptic anxiety. Communists called it proof of capitalism's impending collapse, while Christian sects cited revelations, hail and fire mingled with blood. Yet the most haunting legacy of Tunguska isn't in the prophecies it spawned, but in the questions it left unanswered. Modern simulations suggest the blast was caused by a stony asteroid exploding 6 miles up, but why has nothing similar recurred in over a century? Why did seismic stations as far as England detect tremors, yet no government investigated for decades? Perhaps the real lesson lies in how humanity grapples with the unknown. When faced with a phenomenon that defies explanation, we don't just fear the event itself, we fear what it says about our place in a universe capable of such casual violence. Tunguska wasn't just a fireball in the Taiga. It was a mirror held up to our deepest terrors, revealing how thin the line between cosmic wonder and cosmic wrath truly is. The letters arrived like clockwork, typed in crisp, chilling prose, each one signed with a crossed circle, symbol eerily reminiscent of an astrological glyph. Between 1968 and 1969, the Zodiac Killer terrorized Northern California, taunting police with cryptograms that promised to reveal his identity. But buried within those ciphers lay something even more unsettling: celestial coordinates, star maps, and references to constellations that turned his crimes into a macabre cosmic game. One of the most infamous examples arrived in November 1969, a 7-page cipher later dubbed the 350 cipher for its 340-character length. When codebreakers finally cracked it 51 years later, they found more than just gloating about unsolved murders. The killer had woven in precise references to the Pleiades star cluster, writing, "I collect slaves for the afterlife on the 7th day when they reach heaven." Astrologers immediately noted the Pleiades' mythological significance, known as the Seven Sisters. They've symbolized both divine wrath and hidden knowledge since ancient times. More chillingly, the cipher's release coincided with the Pleiades' annual zenith in the night sky, as if the zodiac was synchronizing his horrors with the heavens. Then there's the unsolved 320 cipher, mailed alongside a blood-stained piece of victim Paul Stein's shirt. Embedded within its jumbled symbols are what appear to be star patterns matching the constellation Orion, specifically the alignment of Betelgeuse, Rigel, and Bellatrix. Here's where it gets eerie. Orion has long been associated with hunters in mythology, and the cipher's mailing date aligned with Orion's belt being perfectly vertical at midnight, a rare positional quirk some believe the killer exploited as a signature. Modern criminologists speculate these weren't just taunts, but a warped attempt to immortalize himself among the stars, turning victims into celestial coordinates in some twisted personal cosmos. But why stars? The Zodiac's obsession with astronomy might trace back to his references to the radian and the angle of radians in other letters, terms used in both trigonometry and celestial navigation. Some researchers propose he was a failed engineer or naval officer, channeling professional frustration into cosmic grandiosity. Others note his symbol, the crossed circle, mirrors medieval astrology's symbol for Earth, suggesting delusions of playing God by orchestrating lives like celestial bodies. Even his choice of victims followed a grim pattern. All attacks occurred near dates when Mercury, the trickster planet, was in retrograde, a detail that sends shivers through astrologers to this day. Decades later, the debate still rages. Are these celestial references calculated clues, or the ramblings of a narcissist grasping for cosmic significance? Codebreakers at the FBI's cryptanalysis unit lean toward the former, noting how precisely his star maps align with actual ephemerides from the 60s. Yet prominent astrologer Rebecca Belmont argues the killer might have suffered from a rare form of schizophrenia called astromania, where delusions fixate on constellations. Meanwhile, amateur sleuths continue scouring old almanacs, convinced the Zodiac left one last cipher, a star map pointing to his real name, waiting to be decoded under the right alignment of planets. What makes the Zodiac star maps uniquely horrifying isn't just their precision, but their perversion of humanity's oldest language. For millennia, we've looked to the stars for guidance, comfort, and meaning. The Zodiac twisted that cosmic dialogue into something monstrous, turning constellations into accomplices. Whether his celestial clues were genius or madness, they achieved one thing: ensuring his crimes would forever haunt us, not just on Earth, but in the cold, watchful silence of the night sky. For centuries, the elders of the Hopi people have guarded a prophecy so precise it chills the spine, a warning from the stars themselves. They speak of the Blue Kachina, a celestial dancer who will appear when the world teeters on the brink of destruction, heralding a time of purification. But this isn't just myth, it's a cosmic alarm clock set to ring when humanity's imbalance reaches its peak. And here's where the story takes a turn. In the late 20th century, something uncanny happened. Reports of blue-hued UFOs surged across the American Southwest, eerily mirroring the Hopi's ancient vision. Were these sightings mere coincidence or something far more profound? The prophecy's details are startlingly specific. According to Hopi oral tradition passed down through generations of elders, the Blue Kachina, or Sotaknang, would first manifest as a blue star, growing brighter until it revealed itself as a spirit being. Its arrival would coincide with Earth's great shaking, a cleansing of greed and corruption through natural disasters. Elders like the revered Thomas Baniasia, who shared the prophecy with the United Nations in 1992, described it not as doom but as rebirth. When the blue star makes its dance in the heavens, the fifth world will emerge from the ashes of the fourth. Now fast forward to August 1997. Over Phoenix, Arizona, hundreds witnessed a massive V-shaped formation of lights, some glowing an eerie cobalt blue drifting silently across the night sky. The event, now infamous as the Phoenix Lights, became one of the most documented UFO sightings in history. But few noticed the chilling parallel. Phoenix lies just south of the Hopi Mesas, where elders had quietly predicted the Blue Kachina's return for decades. Even stranger, Hopi artist Clifford Mahuti later revealed that tribal sentinels had recorded unusual blue lights over Black Mesa weeks earlier, lights that moved unlike any aircraft. Skeptics dismiss the connection, arguing the Phoenix Lights were military flares. Yet the Hopi perspective challenges our very definitions of reality. To them, Kachinas aren't extraterrestrials, but interdimensional teachers who have visited Earth since time immemorial. Their prophecies describe cycles of destruction and renewal tied to celestial patterns, a concept that unnervingly echoes modern astrophysics. Recent studies of supernova remnants suggest cosmic rays could trigger Chinese letter in human consciousness, while the Mayan calendar's galactic alignment theory posits that celestial events influence earthly evolution. Perhaps the most haunting twist came in 2017, when a blue fireball streaked across the Midwest, a meteor burning peculiarly bright due to copper in its composition. To astronomers, it was a curiosity. To Hopi elders, it was another whisper from the cosmos. As one elder put it, the blue star doesn't announce the end. It announces the choice the moment we decide whether to heed the warnings written in the sky for centuries. Whether you see these events as myth or omen, one truth remains: the stars have always spoken. The question is, are we listening? December 21, 2020, as twilight settled over the horizon, telescopes and smartphones alike tilted toward the southwestern sky, all trained on a celestial event that hadn't occurred so brightly in nearly 800 years. Jupiter and Saturn, the solar system's two largest planets, drew so close they appeared to merge into a single radiant point, a phenomenon astronomers call the Great Conjunction. But for millions watching, this wasn't just a rare orbital dance. It was the culmination of prophecies old and new, a cosmic crossroads where science and mysticism collided with unsettling relevance. Historically, great conjunctions have always carried weight. Medieval astrologers dubbed Jupiter and Saturn the celestial chronocrators, timekeepers whose 20-year alignments were believed to herald earthly shifts in power, economics, and even plagues. The last time these planets embraced this tightly was in 1226, when Genghis Khan's empire reached its zenith and Europe teetered on the brink of the Little Ice Age. Fast forward to 2020, and the stage was eerily set. A global pandemic, political upheavals, and climate disasters unfolded just as the Christmas star, as some called it, blazed overhead. Coincidence? To astrologers and conspiracy theorists alike, the answer was a resounding no. Social media erupted with interpretations. TikTok videos dissected the conjunction's astrological meaning, noting it occurred in Aquarius, a sign associated with innovation and upheaval. Reddit threads linked it to Nostradamus's cryptic line about two brothers torn apart, bringing chaos, while New Age circles proclaimed it the cosmic trigger for a great awakening. Even mainstream outlets couldn't resist the allure. CNN ran a segment comparing it to the Star of Bethlehem, and astronomers found themselves fielding questions about whether planetary gravity could influence Earth's tides of fate. Yet beneath the hype lay a kernel of celestial truth. The 2020 conjunction wasn't just visually striking. It marked the start of a new 200-year cycle where Jupiter-Saturn meetings will occur primarily in air signs Aquarius, Libra, Gemini, a shift last seen in the Renaissance. Historians like John Hogg pointed out that previous air sign eras coincided with explosions of intellectual freedom: the printing press, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment. Could this explain 2020's explosion of remote work, blockchain, and AI advancements? Astrologers argued yes, framing the pandemic not as an interruption, but an accelerator for the very changes the stars had foretold. Skeptics, of course, rolled their eyes. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson famously tweeted that the planets were 500 million miles apart. Their gravitational pull on you is less than your toaster's. But here's what science can't dismiss: the psychological power of these alignments. When people in lockdown stared at that glowing double planet, many didn't see icy gas giants. They saw a mirror reflecting their collective anxiety and hope. Perhaps that's the real prophecy hidden in conjunctions. Not that the stars control our fate, but that we'll always search their light for meaning, especially when the Earth beneath us feels unmoored. As Jupiter and Saturn slowly drifted apart in the following weeks, one question lingered: had the conjunction been a beacon of doom or a promise of renewal? The answer, as always, depended on who you asked, but one thing was certain: for a brief moment in 2020, humanity looked up together, united by the ancient, unshakable belief that the cosmos speaks. Whether we're listening wisely, though, is a mystery no telescope can solve. Mitchell de Nostradamus sat hunched over his brass astrolabe in the dead of night, tracing the paths of planets across parchment stained with ink and candle wax. The 16th century apothecary turned prophet penned over 900 quatrains, cryptic four-line verses that claimed to unveil the future. But what's often forgotten is how deeply his predictions were rooted in the celestial. Eclipses, comets, and planetary alignments weren't just backdrop in his writings, they were the very language of his prophecies. And centuries later, we're still grappling with one haunting question: did Nostradamus truly foresee calamities in the stars, or have we twisted his words to fit events after they happened? Take Quatrain 272, one of his most debated. In the year of the new century and 9 months, from the sky will come a great king of terror. For decades, this was retroactively tied to 9/11, 2001 being the new century, and September the 9th month fitting the timeline. But peel back the layers and you'll find Nostradamus was likely referencing something far more astronomical. In the 1550s, a total solar eclipse darkened Europe on August 11th, 9 months after the new year by the Julian calendar. To Renaissance minds, eclipses were divine punctuation marks, and this one coincided with the bloody aftermath of King Henry II's fatal jousting accident. The King of Terror wasn't a modern terrorist, it was the shadow of the moon itself, a celestial omen of royal downfall. Then there's the infamous Hister quatrain, often misread as predicting Hitler. Beasts wild with hunger will cross rivers, most of the army will be against Hister. Modern scholars argue Hister refers to the Danube River's Latin name Ister, not the German dictator. But here's where the stars come in. Nostradamus wrote this during a rare alignment of Mars and Saturn planets astrologically linked to war and famine. He wasn't foreseeing the Holocaust, he was interpreting a cosmic recipe for conflict, one that's recurred throughout history whenever these planets clashed. Comets, though, were Nostradamus' favorite harbingers. Quatrain 385 describes a long trail of sparks preceding Great Plague and famine, a passage later linked to both the Great London Plague of 1665, which followed Halley's Comet, and the Spanish Flu of 1918 after the daylight visible comet of 1910. But Nostradamus didn't need time travel to make these connections. He borrowed from ancient astrological texts like Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, which taught that comets in Leo heralded monarchs' deaths, while those in Pisces signaled floods. His genius wasn't in prediction, but in crafting verses flexible enough to fit multiple disasters across centuries. The darkest twist, some of his predictions only became uncanny because we made them so. After the Challenger disaster, conspiracy theorists claimed Nostradamus foretold it with, "The bird will fall before it has flown." In reality, the original French reads, "Le chant du coq sera mal entendu," the rooster's song will be misunderstood. It was part of a mundane quatrain about peasant uprisings, retroactively edited to match the tragedy. This pattern repeats with everything from the moon landing to COVID, proof of how desperately we want the stars to make sense of our chaos. So what did Nostradamus truly foresee? Perhaps just this, that humanity would never stop searching the heavens for meaning, even when the answers were written in our own reflection all along. His quatrains endure not because they're magic, but because they're mirrors distorting time and event until every generation sees its own face staring back from the celestial glass. April 15, 2014, the first full moon of spring rose not in silver, but in a deep, unsettling crimson. As Earth's shadow crept across its surface, millions around the world watched in awe and unease. This wasn't just any lunar eclipse, it was the opening act of a celestial quartet, a rare tetrad of 4 total blood moons, each coinciding with major Jewish holidays over 2 years. To some, this alignment wasn't astronomical coincidence, it was a ticking clock counting down to something far darker. The modern blood moon prophecy traces back to 2 Christian pastors, John Hagee and Mark Biltz, who in 2008 began poring over ancient texts and NASA eclipse tables. They noticed something chilling. The 2014 to 2015 tetrad fell precisely on Passover and Sukkot, mirroring tetrads from 1493, the year Jews were expelled from Spain, and 1949, Israel's founding. Hagee's book, 4 Blood Moons, argued this pattern signaled impending catastrophe, citing the biblical book of Joel. The sun shall turn to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. Media outlets seized on the theory, with headlines asking if the eclipses foreshadowed war, economic collapse, or even the rapture. But what exactly paints the moon red during these events? Science offers a breathtaking explanation, one far removed from prophecy. During a total lunar eclipse, sunlight filtering through Earth's atmosphere gets scattered, with shorter blue wavelengths bending away while longer red wavelengths refract toward the moon. The effect is like projecting every sunrise and sunset on Earth onto the lunar surface simultaneously. Atmospheric conditions dictate the hue. Volcanic ash can deepen the crimson, while clear skies may render it coppery. Ancient cultures from the Babylonians to the Inca saw these eclipses as omens, but modern astronomy strips away the mystique while leaving the spectacle intact. Historically, tetrads aren't as rare as prophecies suggest. NASA records show they've occurred 85 times since the 1st century, including clusters during relatively peaceful eras. The 1967 tetrad, for instance, aligned with Jerusalem's reunification, a positive milestone for many, while the 2003 tetrad passed without global catastrophe. Even the matching holidays claim wobbles under scrutiny. Prior to 1500, Jewish calendars used mathematical calculations rather than astronomical observation, meaning eclipse dates didn't always neatly align with festivals. Yet perhaps the most fascinating twist came after the 2015 tetrad concluded and the world kept turning. Rather than fading, blood moon mythology evolved. Some theorists shifted focus to the Black Moon of 2016, while others noted the 2024 eclipse's path over North America, dubbing it the Americana eclipse. This adaptability reveals less about celestial signs than human psychology, our tendency to retrofit meaning onto cosmic events, especially during times of uncertainty. The blood moons didn't predict disaster, they reflected our perennial hunger for patterns in the chaos, a reminder that the night sky has always been both a mirror and a canvas for our deepest fears and hopes. So were the blood moons prophetic? In a way, yes, but not as their most vocal interpreters claimed. They prophesied something more subtle, that as long as humanity gazes upward, we'll keep finding stories in the stars, warnings in the shadows, and meaning in the light that filters through our own atmosphere onto the waiting face of the moon. The real mystery isn't whether the heavens speak, it's why we're so determined to hear our own voices echoed back. In the scorching dunes of Mali, where the Niger River curves like a crescent moon, the Dogon people have guarded a secret for centuries, a celestial knowledge so precise it defies explanation. Their elders speak of Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, with details no telescope could reveal until the modern era. They knew Sirius had a tiny, dense companion star they called Potolo, the smallest seed, long before Western astronomers confirmed Sirius B's existence in 1862. But here's what stuns scientists even more. The Dogon described its 50-year elliptical orbit, its incredible density, all things are drawn to it, and its white color, all accurate traits of a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye. So how did an isolated tribe without written language or optical instruments possess astrophysics knowledge that Europe wouldn't grasp for generations? The mystery deepened in the 1930s when French anthropologists Marcel Grioul and Germain Dieterlen lived among the Dogon for decades, recording their cosmology. In elaborate rituals, Dogon priests traced the orbit of Potolo in the sand using wooden divination tables, marking its position relative to Sirius with uncanny precision. Their creation myths even described a third star in the Sirius system, Amya, which they associated with a mythical ark bringing life to Earth. For years, astronomers dismissed this as folklore until in 1995, two French astronomers proposed the existence of Sirius C, a possible red dwarf still unconfirmed. Was this another staggering coincidence or evidence of something far stranger? Enter the extraterrestrial hypothesis. In 1976, author Robert Temple electrified the world with the Sirius mystery, arguing the Dogon's knowledge came from amphibious beings from the Sirius system who visited Earth 5,000 years ago. He pointed to Dogon artwork depicting fish-like creatures they called Namo, described as celestial teachers who descended in a spinning vessel amid fire and thunder. Temple linked this to Sumerian myths of Omens, a fish god who brought civilization, and even suggested ancient Egyptian priests who worshipped Sirius as the goddess Sopdet passed this star lore to the Dogon. UFO enthusiasts seized on the parallels, calling it smoking gun proof of alien contact, but skeptics pushed back hard. Anthropologist Walter Van Beek, who studied the Dogon in the 1980s, found no evidence they knew of Sirius B before Grioul's visits, suggesting the anthropologist himself, eager for a groundbreaking discovery, might have inadvertently planted the ideas. Others note that Sirius, as the Nile's heliacal rising star, was intensely studied by ancient Egyptians whose trade routes stretched deep into Africa. Could fragments of their astronomy have trickled down to the Dogon over millennia? Then there's the simplest explanation, the tribe's legendary observational skills. Dogon astronomers tracked Venus's 8-year cycle and Jupiter's moons long before telescopes. Perhaps they noticed Sirius's subtle wobble caused by its invisible companion, a deduction as brilliant as it was intuitive. Yet the most tantalizing clue lies in the Dogon's own words. When asked how they knew of Po Tolo, elders simply said, "The Namo told us." For them, the mystery was never about proof. It was about trust in the ancestors who read the sky like a map. Whether their knowledge came from alien visitors, ancient trade, or sheer genius, the Dogon remind us that the cosmos speaks in many languages, and sometimes the most profound truths aren't found in textbooks, but in the stories whispered under the light of a star we're still learning to understand. London was a tinderbox waiting for a spark in the summer of 1666, not just in metaphor, but in grim reality. The cramped, pitch-coated wooden houses along the Thames stood like kindling beneath a merciless drought. And then, in the early hours of September 2nd, flames erupted in a baker's oven on Pudding Lane. Within days, 87 churches and 13,000 homes lay in ashes. But amid the chaos, whispers spread faster than the fire itself. This wasn't an accident, it was punishment. For months, a terrifying comet had blazed across European skies, its twin tails like flaming scourges lashing the heavens. To a populace steeped in biblical imagery, the message seemed clear. God had sent a warning in the stars, and now his wrath rained down in fire. The comet that triggered this panic had first appeared in December 1664, a spectacle so vivid it cast shadows at midnight. Contemporary broadsheets described it as a sword hanging over Christendom, while diarist Samuel Pepys recorded Londoners standing on rooftops, trembling as it burned with a fury most unnatural. Astronomers like Johannes Hevelius mapped its path, but clergy dominated the conversation. Fire and brimstone preachers declared it the Star of Wormwood from Revelation, foretelling bitter calamity. When plague erupted the following year, killing a quarter of London's population, the comet's reputation as a harbinger of doom seemed sealed. By the time flames engulfed the city, the link felt inevitable. Quack pamphleteers even revealed the comet's smoke had seeped into London's thatch, waiting for divine ignition. What makes this cosmic scapegoating fascinating is how global it was. While London burned, Vienna's astronomers logged the same comet, coinciding with an outbreak of dancing mania, a mass hysteria where citizens collapsed in frenzied convulsions. In Portugal, peasants swore the comet's reflection in wells had poisoned their crops. These reactions weren't just medieval superstition lingering past its time. They reflected a seismic shift in how Europe processed disaster. The Renaissance had birthed empirical science, yet the populace still defaulted to celestial explanations when crisis struck. The comet became a Rorschach blot for collective trauma, a way to make senseless suffering feel ordained rather than random. Modern astronomy reveals the irony. The 1664 comet was a near-Earth visitor now classified as C1664, W1, a dirty snowball with no conceivable link to terrestrial events. Yet its cultural aftershocks reshaped history. After the fire, London's rebuilt streets were widened and made fireproof, not because officials dismissed the comet theory, but because they feared provoking divine retribution again. The disaster also birthed the first property insurance schemes, with firms adopting the phoenix as their symbol, a nod to rebirth from flames, but also a quiet dig at comet-fueled hysteria. Perhaps the greatest lesson lies in how quickly hard science bends under the weight of human fear. When Halley's comet returned in 1682, Londoners didn't panic, not because comets were better understood, but because their collective memory had rerouted. Now comets were curiosities for coffeehouse debates rather than portents. The real fire wasn't celestial, it was the slow burn of reason catching light. And like all paradigm shifts, it left ashes of old beliefs in its wake. March 13, 1997, the night the sky over Arizona became a theater of the inexplicable. Thousands of witnesses, from radar operators to retired pilots, watched as a mile-wide V formation of lights glided silently across the state, pausing unnaturally over Phoenix before vanishing into the desert darkness. The event became one of the most witnessed UFO sightings in history. Yet beneath the modern mystery lies something older, stranger, a thread connecting these lights to prophecies whispered long before airplanes dotted the skies. The government's response only deepened the intrigue, first dismissing the sightings as military flares during routine exercises. Officials later backtracked when meteorologists confirmed no aircraft were logged in the area that night. Declassified documents revealed frantic calls between air traffic control and Luke Air Force Base, with one controller audibly shaken, stating, "Whatever that was, it wasn't one of ours." Governor Fife Symington initially mocked the phenomenon by having an aide dress as an alien for a press conference, only to confess years later he'd seen the lights himself and feared public panic. This dance of denial and half-admission fueled theories of a cover-up, but the real shock came when researchers cross-referenced the event with indigenous star lore. Hopi elders recognized the lights immediately. For generations, their prophecies had spoken of the blue star Kachina, a celestial messenger whose appearance would signal the day of purification, when humanity must choose between harmony and destruction. Tribal historians pointed to petroglyphs near Sedona depicting strange, helmeted figures beside V-shaped symbols resembling the Phoenix Lights formation. Even more striking, Hopi oral tradition placed the Kachina's arrival in the fifth world, a cycle beginning when the spider web connects all people, a description eerily matching the Internet's rise in the late 1990s. Not all explanations drift into the mystical. Skeptics argue the lights were experimental stealth aircraft, perhaps the then classified Aurora spy plane or early drone swarms. Aviation experts note the formation's rigid geometry aligns with military flight patterns, not organic movement. But this theory falters when confronted with witness accounts of the object's sheer size, estimated at over a mile wide, and its ability to hover soundlessly for minutes, defying known aerodynamics. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between the cosmic and the clandestine. Former Canadian Defence Minister Paul Hellyer publicly stated the Phoenix Lights were extraterrestrial, while Area 51 whistleblowers claimed similar crafts were reverse-engineered from alien technology. Yet for the Hopi, the debate misses the point. Whether the lights were secret government projects or celestial messengers, their appearance fulfilled an ancient warning, one that urges us to look beyond cover-ups and ask not just what flew over Phoenix, but why its arrival was foretold centuries before the first airplane took flight. The first reports came in like fragments of a nightmare, an eerie red glow near the abandoned TNT plant in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Locals spoke of something impossible, a winged figure 7 feet tall with burning eyes that pierced the November darkness. But what made the Mothman legend more than just another cryptid sighting was the unsettling celestial backdrop against which it unfolded. Witnesses described strange lights dancing in the sky before encounters, while others swore the creature itself seemed to materialize from the stars. And when disaster struck barely a year later, with the Silver Bridge collapsing into the Ohio River during rush hour, claiming 46 lives, the chilling question emerged: had the Mothman been a cosmic warning all along? Let's rewind to that fateful night of November 15, 1966. Two young couples driving near the TNT plant spotted something that would rewrite local folklore: a gray, man-shaped creature with massive wings and eyes that reflected red like bicycle reflectors. But here's the detail often overlooked. All four witnesses first noticed an unusual light hovering above the trees, pulsing like a dying star before the figure emerged. Over the next 13 months, nearly 100 sightings followed, almost always preceded by these mysterious aerial phenomena. Deputy Sheriff Millard Halstead, one of the first officials to document reports, noted in his logbook that multiple witnesses described star-like objects that moved erratically before vanishing, behavior utterly unlike aircraft or meteors. The supernatural elements deepened when researchers uncovered an old Shawnee legend in the area. Tribal elders spoke of the Winged One, a spirit said to appear when the Pleiades star cluster aligned with the moon, foretelling great upheaval. In November 1966, the Pleiades were indeed at their brightest seasonal visibility, a celestial coincidence that didn't escape paranormal investigators. Even weirder, the Silver Bridge collapsed on December 15, 1967, exactly 1 month after the final Mothman sighting, and during another peak visibility window for the Pleiades. To those steeped in indigenous sky lore, the parallel wasn't just eerie, it was a grim fulfillment of prophecy. Skeptics naturally dismissed the connection. Engineers later determined the bridge failed due to a defective eyebar in its suspension chain, a structural flaw, not a supernatural omen. Yet even the most hardened pragmatists struggled to explain two things: why reports of the Mothman and accompanying lights ceased immediately after the tragedy, and why multiple survivors claimed to see a dark, winged shape soaring above the wreckage as the bridge groaned into the river. One rescue worker, Carl Dennison, later told reporters, "It wasn't a bird, it wasn't a plane, it was just watching." The most compelling twist came decades later when astronomer Jacques Vallée re-examined the case. He noted that Point Pleasant lies along the 37th parallel, a latitude infamous for UFO activity, from the Kentucky's Hopkinsville, Goblin's case to the Area 51 corridor. Vallée theorized that the Mothman might represent a form of ultra-terrestrial phenomenon, an intelligence that manipulates human perception, appearing as monsters or angels depending on cultural context. In this light, the creature wasn't merely predicting disaster, but perhaps even interacting with the timeline itself. After all, several witnesses reported premonitions of the bridge collapse after their encounters, including one woman who cancelled her usual commute after dreaming of red eyes and falling metal. So was the Mothman a misunderstood omen, an interdimensional traveler, or simply mass hysteria fueled by stress and strange weather reflections? The truth might be stranger than any single explanation. Because what lingers isn't just the mystery of a winged apparition, it's the realization that our oldest instincts still hold sway. When something lurks at the edge of understanding, when lights dance where they shouldn't, we'll always weave stories to fill the void. And sometimes, just sometimes, those stories write themselves into history with a clarity that defies dismissal. The Mothman didn't just haunt Point Pleasant, it held up a mirror to our eternal dance with the unknown, one where the stars themselves might be silent participants. The desert sands whisper secrets older than history itself, and nowhere do those secrets seem more deliberate than in the silent majesty of Egypt's pyramids. But look beyond their towering limestone faces, and you'll find a celestial riddle etched into the very alignment of these ancient wonders. The three pyramids of Giza, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure don't just stand in a row. They mirror the three stars of Orion's belt with an accuracy that defies coincidence. The question isn't just how the builders achieved such precision without modern tools, it's why. Were the pyramids a grand celestial prophecy, a map to the heavens meant to outlast empires, or is this cosmic connection nothing more than an illusion spun by overeager stargazers? The Orion correlation theory took root in the 1980s when researcher Robert Bovell noticed something uncanny. The layout of the Giza pyramids doesn't just resemble Orion's belt, it mirrors the constellation's exact proportions, with the Nile River standing in for the Milky Way. Even more startling, Bovell calculated that the alignment was mathematically perfect around 10,500 BC, a date far older than conventional Egyptology accepts for the pyramids. This led to a radical idea. What if the pyramids weren't just tombs, but a colossal architectural time capsule, encoding astronomical knowledge from a lost civilization? Mainstream Egyptologists push back hard. They argue the pyramid's alignment matches the cardinal directions with slight deviations, errors consistent with the builder's rudimentary tools. The apparent link to Orion, they say, is cherry-picking. After all, out of the thousands of stars visible to the naked eye, any 3 points on Earth could theoretically match some asterism if you squint hard enough. But here's where the plot thickens. The pyramid texts inscribed spells meant to guide pharaohs to the afterlife are riddled with explicit references to Orion. One passage reads, "The king is a star illuminating the sky, joining Orion in the Duat." The Duat, in Egyptian cosmology, was both the underworld and the stretch of sky where Orion and Sirius rose. This wasn't just poetry, it was a celestial roadmap. The mystery deepens when you examine the air shafts of the Great Pyramid. These narrow tunnels, long dismissed as ventilation shafts, actually point directly to key stars at precise moments. The southern shaft in the King's Chamber aligns with Orion around 2500 BC, the accepted construction date, while the northern one targets Thuban, the pole star of that era. Coincidence unlikely. Ancient Egyptian architects were meticulous astronomers, tracking Sirius's heliacal rising to predict Nile floods and using star clocks to time religious ceremonies. The pyramid's alignment might not be prophecy in the traditional sense, but it's almost certainly intentional, a stone and mortar hymn to the cosmos. Yet the most tantalizing clue comes from an unexpected source, the desert itself. In 1993, satellite imaging revealed a fourth, smaller pyramid at Giza, one that, when added to the layout, mirrors Orion's fainter fourth star, Mesa. The catch: this pyramid was dismantled centuries ago, its stones repurposed for Cairo's mosques. If Orion's pattern was accidental, why include a fourth structure that completes the celestial map? Skeptics counter that ancient cultures worldwide often aligned monuments with stars, from Stonehenge's solstice markers to Angkor Wat's Draco correlations. But Egypt's case stands apart in its precision and its spiritual stakes. For the pharaohs, joining Orion wasn't symbolism, it was salvation. They believed their souls would ascend to become stars, and the pyramids were their launchpad. So maybe the truth lies between the extremes. The pyramids weren't prophetic in the sense of predicting future events. They were a cosmic anchor, tethering the earthly to the eternal. A reminder that long after empires crumble, the stars remain. And sometimes, if you build boldly enough, you can touch them. April 14, 1566, at dawn broke over Nuremberg to a sight that would sear itself into history. Citizens staggered into the streets, clutching prayer books and children, as the sky above their medieval city became a battleground. Hundreds swore they saw colossal cylindrical shapes clashing amid crimson and black spheres, spewing fiery mists across the heavens. A local broadsheet captured the chaos in a now iconic woodcut: suns dueling, crosses forming in the clouds, and townsfolk collapsing in terror. But this wasn't mere mass hysteria. The Nuremberg phenomenon erupted at the powder keg moment of the Protestant Reformation, when Europe's very soul seemed up for grabs, and to a population steeped in biblical prophecy, the celestial war overhead wasn't just spectacle. It was the book of Revelation unfolding in real time. What makes the Nuremberg event so chilling isn't just the sheer number of witnesses. Entire congregations, city councilmen, even rival Catholic and Lutheran priests agreed on the broad details, but how precisely it mirrored apocalyptic anxieties of the era. Martin Luther had died just 20 years prior, leaving Christendom fractured. Peasant revolts raged, the Ottoman Empire pressed at Europe's gates, and comets had blazed ominously in 1556 and 1558. Into this tinderbox fell the sky's apparent violence. The broadsheet's description read like a dispatch from Armageddon. Some of the tubes began to fight amongst themselves. Others grew blood red and faded away. Modern UFO enthusiasts point to this as early evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, but Reformation-era minds went straight to the Bible's wonders in heaven, foretelling the end times. Scientists have spent centuries trying to explain what Nuremberg actually saw. The most plausible theory, a rare atmospheric refraction event magnifying and distorting a meteor swarm. When icy debris from Comet Thatcher, parent of April's Lyrid meteors, enters Earth's atmosphere at shallow angles, it can create elongated, glowing shapes. Add the sundog phenomenon, where ice crystals split sunlight into phantom orbs, and you've got a recipe for celestial illusions. But here's the catch: such events usually last minutes. Nuremberg's spectacle endured hours, witnessed across 80 miles of countryside. Even more perplexing, no other European city recorded anything similar that day, suggesting the phenomenon was intensely localized, almost targeted. The aftermath proved just as revealing as the event itself. Pamphlets spread the account like wildfire, each edition embellished with fresh eyewitness details. Lutheran preachers cited it as proof of God's wrath against papal corruption, while Catholic counter-propaganda framed it as divine rebuke of Protestant heresy. In Geneva, John Calvin's followers quietly added the Nuremberg woodcut to their editions of Revelation commentaries. The sky battle became a Rorschach test for religious fury, proving how readily celestial anomalies get weaponized during ideological schisms. Perhaps the real mystery isn't what Nuremberg saw, but why we're still grappling with its meaning. When a nearly identical aerial battle occurred over Basel in 1566, complete with black spheres and crashing spears of fire, the pattern became undeniable. These weren't random weather quirks, they were cosmic ink blots onto which humanity projected its fractures. 5 centuries later, the Nuremberg broadsheet endures as a cautionary tale. When the heavens seem to take sides, it's usually because we've forgotten how to see them as anything but a mirror of our own divisions. And sometimes the most terrifying celestial prophecies are the ones we write ourselves. The year 1066 didn't just reshape the map of England, it burned itself into the heavens. As William the Conqueror's fleet crossed the English Channel that September, an uninvited guest streaked across the sky. Halley's Comet, its tail slicing through the night like a celestial sword. To the Anglo-Saxons, this long-haired star was a harbinger of doom, a sign their world was about to shatter. To the Normans, it was divine approval stamped across the cosmos. And woven into the threads of the Bayeux Tapestry, that 70-meter-long embroidered chronicle of the Norman conquest, the comet hangs suspended over terrified crowds, forever binding cosmic spectacle to earthly conquest. The tapestry's comet panel is deceptively simple. Latin script above it reads Isti Murrent Stella, these men wonder at the star. Below, a group of huddled figures point upward, their faces etched with fear, while King Harold himself sits rigid on his throne, gripping its arms as if the ground might betray him. What makes this scene so electrifying isn't just the artistry, it's the precision of the timing. Halley's Comet reached peak brightness in April 1066, months before William's invasion. Yet the tapestry places it immediately after Harold's coronation, framing the celestial event not as astronomy, but as political propaganda. By stitching the comet into this moment, the Norman creators weaponized the heavens, turning a natural phenomenon into God's judgment against Harold's disputed claim to the throne. But why did comets carry such weight in the medieval mind? The answer lies in a 9th century text lurking in monastery libraries across Europe. The wonders of the universe, which declared comets the firebrands of angels flung down to warn mankind. This wasn't just poetry, it was doctrine. When Halley's Comet had appeared in 989, chroniclers linked it to Viking raids. Its return in 966 coincided with Emperor Otto's march on Rome. Each pass became a Rorschach test for collective anxiety, and 1066 was no exception. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle recorded the comet's appearance with grim resignation. Il thas gear cometa si stiorat, and he forsweotelode the toed wies. All this year the comet star showed itself, and it foretold what was to come. The real stroke of Norman genius was in flipping this narrative. While Saxon monks trembled at the comet, William's propagandists recast it as his personal celestial endorsement. A later Norman chronicle, The Deeds of Duke William, describes the comet as a sign of change trailing fire like the banners of Christ's army. This rhetorical pivot was unprecedented, transforming an omen of disaster into one of destiny. Even the tapestry's material whispers this manipulation. Analysis of the wool threads reveals the comet's tail was originally embroidered in silver thread, now oxidized to black, a deliberate choice to make it gleam like a divine flare against the linen sky. Science, of course, offers a humbler truth. Halley's Comet swings by Earth every 76 years like clockwork, its 1066 appearance no more tied to Hastings than to droughts in China or dynastic shifts in Mali. But history isn't written by gravity, it's written by those who survived to shape the story. The Bayeux Tapestry's comet endures not because it was accurate, but because it was audacious. William didn't just conquer England, he conquered the sky itself, bending its light to justify his reign. And in those frayed threads, we see the birth of a timeless tactic, the art of turning celestial coincidence into crafted destiny, where the winner doesn't just rewrite history, but the very heavens above it. Deep in the vaults of ancient Mesopotamia, etched into crumbling clay tablets, lies the origin of one of the Internet's most stubborn cosmic conspiracy theories. The Sumerians called it Nibiru, a celestial body they described as the home of their gods, the Anunnaki. But over millennia, this obscure reference warped into something far more ominous, a rogue planet hidden from modern telescopes, locked on a collision course with Earth. A celestial boogeyman that refuses to die despite being debunked by astronomers countless times. The modern Nibiru mythos exploded in 1976 when author Zecharia Sitchin reinterpreted, and many scholars argue mistranslated, ancient Sumerian texts. He claimed Nibiru wasn't just a mythological realm, but a real 12th planet in our solar system with a 3,600-year elliptical orbit. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki were alien visitors from Nibiru who genetically engineered humanity as slave labor. Pseudoscientific as his theories were, they struck a chord. By the 1990s, Nibiru had morphed into a planetary wrecking ball, supposedly prophesied to return and trigger global cataclysm. Then came the Internet age, and Nibiru found its megaphone. In 2003, self-proclaimed remote viewer Nancy Lieder announced she'd received psychic warnings from extraterrestrials. Nibiru would arrive in 2012, coinciding with the end of the Mayan calendar. When Doomsday fizzled, the date simply shifted 2017, then 2020, then any day now. YouTube became a hotbed of hoaxes with manipulated NASA footage and fake telescopic images of a looming red planet. Conspiracy forums insisted governments were hiding the truth, pointing to odd cloud formations or solar flares as proof of Nibiru's approach. Scientists have dismantled the theory repeatedly. No rogue planet could exist in our solar system undetected. Its gravitational pull would have disrupted outer planet orbits long ago. Infrared surveys like WISE have mapped the sky for massive hidden objects, finding nothing. Even the original Sumerian texts, when translated without Sitchin's creative liberties, described Nibiru not as a planet, but as a symbolic crossing point in the heavens, linked to the god Marduk's rise to power. Yet Nibiru endures because it taps into something primal, a fear of the unknown lurking just beyond our vision. It's the cosmic equivalent of a monster under the bed, adapting to each generation's anxieties. Climate change. Nibiru's tail disrupts weather patterns, pandemics. Its gravitational waves release space viruses. The irony is rich. A civilization that mapped Venus's movements with startling accuracy now has its legacy reduced to YouTube clickbait. Maybe the real prophecy here isn't about a phantom planet, but about humanity itself. Nibiru's persistence reveals how easily ancient wisdom can be twisted into modern paranoia, and how, in an age of satellites and space probes, we still project our deepest fears onto the stars. The Sumerians looked up and saw gods. We look up and see doom. The difference says more about us than the cosmos. In the shadowed corridors of World War II, where generals pored over maps and spies whispered in code, another unseen force quietly shaped decisions at the highest levels, the stars themselves. Both Adolf Hitler and Winston Churchill, ideological opposites locked in history's deadliest struggle, shared a surprising secret. Each consulted astrologers, scoured celestial charts, and made pivotal choices under skies heavy with symbolic omens. This wasn't just superstition lurking behind the scenes. It was a calculated dance between cosmic belief and military strategy, where the movements of planets became tangled with the fate of nations. Hitler's obsession with astrology is the stuff of dark legend. His rise to power coincided with a solar eclipse in August 1933, an event his personal mystic, Eric Jan Hannesson, reportedly hailed as the sun bowing to the swastika. But it was the Führer's reliance on Karl Ernst Kraft, a Swiss astrologer, that revealed just how deeply celestial paranoia seeped into Nazi strategy. Kraft's meticulous charts allegedly predicted the Munich Agreement's success in 1938, reinforcing Hitler's belief in his own invincibility. More chillingly, when British intelligence discovered Kraft's accurate forecast of bombings on Berlin in November 1941, they realized the Nazis weren't just glancing at horoscopes, they were weaponizing them. Yet the stars didn't always shine favorably for the Third Reich. June 6, 1944, D-Day unfolded under a celestial alignment so uncanny, it's still debated among historians. Allied planners deliberately chose the invasion date based on tides and moonlight, but astrologers noted something eerie. Jupiter, the planet of expansion, was in Cancer, a sign associated with homeland defense, while Mars squared Saturn in a configuration traditionally linked to catastrophic overreach. For Hitler, who delayed reinforcing Normandy due to his astrologer's warning of a false front in Calais, the cosmos seemed to play a cruel trick. His trust in the stars may have cost him the war's most pivotal battle. Across the Channel, Churchill's relationship with astrology was less mystical but equally strategic. While publicly dismissing cosmic nonsense, he secretly authorized the formation of the British Astrological Bureau, a clandestine unit tasked with crafting fake horoscopes to demoralize Nazi leaders. Their masterstroke, feeding German intelligence, altered predictions implying Hitler's downfall during planetary retrogrades, but Churchill also had personal stakes in the heavens. His private diaries reveal he insisted on reviewing celestial charts before key speeches, and his famous finest hour address was delivered under a nearly exact Mars-Pluto conjunction, an aspect astrologers associate with transformative power. Coincidence, perhaps, but in the hands of a leader who understood symbolism as deeply as warfare, even the illusion of cosmic favor became a weapon. The war's strangest celestial twist came not from human interpretation, but from nature itself. During the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, Allied pilots reported an astonishing phenomenon. The sun appeared blood red at noon, casting long shadows that confused German artillery spotters. Meteorologists later confirmed an atmospheric anomaly caused by ice crystals, but to soldiers on both sides it felt biblical, a literal red sky at morning echoing Christ's warning of storms to come. Within weeks, Hitler's last major offensive collapsed. What do these fragments of astrological history reveal? Not that planets dictated the war's outcome, but that belief in their power shaped decisions at the highest levels. In an age before satellite surveillance, celestial patterns offered a tantalizing, if illusory framework for understanding chaos. For Hitler, they became a crutch for delusion. For Churchill, a psychological tool. And for the millions caught in between, the night sky bore silent witness to a truth as old as human conflict. When the stakes are high enough, even the most rational minds will search the stars for answers or for an edge. In the end, World War II's real cosmic lesson wasn't written in the heavens, but in how desperately we insist they speak our language. August 16, 1987. From the pyramids of Teotihuacan to the slopes of Mount Shasta, tens of thousands gathered as the sun rose, not to protest or pray in the traditional sense, but to align. This was the Harmonic Convergence, a planetary meditation event orchestrated by author José Arguelles, who claimed ancient Mayan calendrics had pinpointed this date as a cosmic pivot point, a final chance for humanity to shift from the path of destruction to one of unity. But beneath the incense and drum circles lay a startling claim that this synchronized global ritual didn't just raise spiritual vibrations, it may have literally pulled the world back from nuclear annihilation. Arguelles built his prophecy on a radical reinterpretation of Mayan timekeeping. While mainstream scholars viewed the long count calendar as a historical record, he saw it as a living blueprint of galactic energy tides. According to his calculations, August 16th marked the end of 22 hell cycles of war and greed, and the opening of a 25-year window to avert planetary collapse. The event's name came from an astrological rarity: all 9 classical planets clustered in a 240-degree arc of the zodiac, forming what he called a solar system chord capable of resonating with Earth's energy grid. Skeptics dismissed it as New Age nonsense, but history records an eerie coincidence. Exactly 1 month later, US and Soviet scientists accidentally came closer to nuclear war than at any point since Cuba. The near miss unfolded on September 26, 1987. A Norwegian research rocket launching into the Aurora Borealis triggered Soviet early warning systems, mistaking its trajectory for a Trident missile strike. For 12 tense minutes, protocol demanded retaliation, until Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, relying on gut instinct over computers, dismissed the alert. Conspiracy theorists later noted this occurred during a geomagnetic storm and on the exact midpoint between 2 harmonic convergence anchor dates. Even physicists like Jack Sarfati speculated whether mass consciousness could influence quantum probabilities, a wild idea, yet one that gained traction when declassified CIA papers revealed Cold War experiments in remote influencing Soviet leaders. Arguelles' followers saw darker confirmations. 3 weeks post-convergence, Wall Street crashed on Black Monday, an event he'd foreseen as the collapse of old financial systems. More chillingly, declassified documents showed Reagan and Gorbachev's summit that December almost failed until Gorbachev unexpectedly accepted Reagan's olive branch, a shift aides attributed to his unusual calm. Harmonic convergence organizers claimed their synchronized meditations had subtly altered decision-makers' brainwaves. It sounded ludicrous until 2019, when Stanford studies confirmed group meditation could lower urban crime rates, lending credence to the Maharishi effect of collective consciousness. Critics, of course, highlight cherry-picking. The convergence's success ignores countless unheeded celestial warnings, from the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis during a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction to the 1983 Able Archer incident amid a solar flare. Astrophysicist Carl Sagan scoffed that the universe doesn't keep appointment books, yet even skeptics concede one truth: the convergence reshaped environmental activism. Its emphasis on planetary interdependence presaged today's climate strikes, and its legacy endures in NAS, a use of solstice alignments to calibrate deep space antennas. Perhaps the real prophecy was never in the stars, but in the event's unspoken message, that in an age of missiles and microchips, we still turn heavenward when the night feels darkest. Whether by cosmic design or sheer luck, the harmonic convergence became a mirror reflecting not just our fears, but our stubborn hope that if enough people believe in change, the universe might just agree. Why do these celestial prophecies grip us so fiercely, lingering in our collective imagination long after science has explained away the omens? The answer lies somewhere between the wiring of our brains and the vast, silent theater of the cosmos itself. From the moment our ancestors first traced constellations in the flicker of firelight, we've been storytellers desperate to believe the universe is whispering secrets meant just for us. Consider the psychological tapestry at play. Our brains are prediction machines hardwired to seek patterns, even where none exist. This phenomenon, called apophenia, explains why Babylonian priests saw lions in the stars warning of invasions, or why medieval peasants interpreted eclipses as divine punctuation marks. When Halley's comet streaked overhead in 1066, it wasn't random that Anglo-Saxons saw doom while Normans saw destiny. The stars are a blank screen, and we project our deepest fears and hopes onto them. This isn't ignorance, it's an evolutionary survival tactic. Recognizing patterns, real or imagined, helped our ancestors prepare for droughts, wars, or famines. The cost of seeing false prophecies was minimal compared to missing a real warning. Yet there's more beneath the surface than just cognitive bias. Celestial prophecies endure because they anchor us in time. Before clocks and calendars, humans marked history by extraordinary sky events. The Crab Nebula supernova of 1054 wasn't just a light show. It became a temporal landmark. Chinese court scribes dated political upheavals by it. Ancestral pueblones etched it into rock art as a generational reminder. These cosmic moments gave societies shared reference points, transforming chaos into narrative. Today, we still do this. Think of how the year of the 2012 Mayan prophecy or the 2020 Great Conjunction instantly evoke cultural moments, binding astronomy to collective memory. The darker thread running through these tales is their uncanny habit of self-fulfillment. When Napoleon's troops saw the 1811 comet as an omen of defeat, their shaken morale may have contributed to their collapse in Russia. The Mothman sightings before the Silver Bridge disaster didn't cause the tragedy, but they primed witnesses to interpret the bridge's groans as supernatural. Prophecies wield power because belief alters behavior, sometimes with deadly consequences. Historians note that the Nuremberg sky battle of 1566 didn't just reflect Reformation tensions, it intensified them, with both Catholics and Protestants citing the event as proof of divine favor. The heavens become accomplices in our conflicts, not because they take sides, but because we insist they do. Perhaps the most poignant reason these stories persist is their role as cosmic consolation. In a universe that's overwhelmingly vast and indifferent, prophecies offer the illusion of intimacy, a sense that the stars notice us. The Hopi Blue Kachina prophecy isn't just about doom. It's a reminder that transformation is woven into existence, as inevitable as supernova scattering the elements of life across the void. Nostradamus's quatrains endure not because they predict specific events, but because they mirror our endless cycle of crisis and reinvention. Even Nibiru, for all its debunked hysteria, taps into a profound human truth. We'd rather face a universe that's malevolent than one that's mute. Science, of course, has peeled back the curtain on many of these mysteries. We know comets aren't fiery swords of judgment, but icy relics of the solar system's birth. Eclipses aren't gods withholding light, they're celestial billiard balls aligning with perfect geometry. Yet instead of diminishing the wonder, this knowledge deepens it. The real magic isn't in imagined omens, but in the fact that cold, mechanical laws create beauty so profound it moves us to myth-making. The same quantum physics that governs electrons also paints the auroras that terrified Vikings into seeing Valkyries. So where does this leave us, gazing upward as our ancestors did, but with a dual vision, appreciating the stories while cherishing the truths behind them? The next time a blood moon rises or a meteor shower streaks overhead, you'll feel that ancient pull, not to panic or prophecy, but to stand at the crossroads of cosmos and consciousness, where every generation gets to whisper its own questions into the dark, and just maybe hear an echo that feels like an answer. From the trembling scribes of ancient Babylon to the conspiracy forums of the digital age, One thread connects all 25 of these celestial prophecies, our unshakable human instinct to look skyward in moments of both wonder and dread. Whether it's comets interpreted as divine warnings, eclipses heralding the fall of kings, or UFO sightings echoing indigenous star lore, these stories reveal less about the cosmos and more about us. The stars might be silent, but their light illuminates the deepest corners of our collective psyche. Our hunger for meaning, our terror of chaos, and our stubborn hope that the universe might still hold secrets worth decoding. Consider how these prophecies mirror the eras that birthed them. The Black Death survivors blamed Halley's Comet because a random catastrophe felt less frightening than a godless void. The Maya framed their calendar's end as rebirth, not doom, reflecting a worldview where time itself was cyclical, a comfort in the face of impermanence. Even modern myths like Nibiru or the blood moons tap into our atomic age anxiety, transforming cosmic unknowns into metaphors for environmental collapse or political upheaval. Every generation gets the celestial omens it deserves, not because the heavens change, but because we do. Yet beneath the fear lies something tender, an almost childlike yearning to believe we're not alone in the vast dark. When Hopi elders speak of the blue star Kachina or Dogon priests describe Sirius's invisible companion, they're not just sharing folklore, they're asserting that the cosmos sees us. That a supernova might carry a message or a planetary alignment might nudge history's scales. Science, of course, offers colder truths, but cold truths don't inspire art or courage or the kind of awe that made our ancestors carve constellations into mammoth tusks 40,000 years ago. So here's the real question these tales leave us with. In an age of satellites and quantum physics, why do these legends still grip us? Perhaps because no amount of data can strip the night sky of its mystery. The same equations that predict eclipses also whisper of black holes and multiverses, realities stranger than any prophecy. Our tools have changed, but our gaze hasn't. We still watch for signs, we still whisper our questions to the stars. Now it's your turn. Which of these celestial legends sent a shiver down your spine? Have you ever witnessed a cosmic event that felt meant for you? A meteor streak, an eclipse, maybe even something you still can't explain? Drop your stories in the comments. Because the next great celestial prophecy might not come from an ancient tablet or a telescope, it might start with someone like you looking